Hello, this is Dan from Small Scenarios. I thought it might be useful for anyone interested in stop motion to see behind the scenes, and for me to share a few of the things I've learned through animating Lego up to this point. Let's start with the setup. Everything sits on a folding table in my office. As you can see, it's all fairly simple, but I'll take you through what's here element by element to show how it all comes together. First of all, of course, you need something to animate. For this stop motion, I chose the Lego City Hot Rod, set number 60485. It's a nice small set that looks good when assembled, despite the relatively low part count. It comes with a minifigure. I don't know if he has an official name, but I've decided to call him Rocco. I store the pieces of the set on a tray to keep them accessible and stop them rolling off the table. There are also a few spare parts from my collection. Some of these are used to support something that's not touching the ground. Others are stand-ins for the actual bricks from the build, for instance during special effects. So here the hot rod is currently about halfway to being built. It's pretty much in the middle of the set, which allows me to shoot it from a few different angles. In my previous animation, the DeLorean time machine, I just used the same grey base plate and a large sheet of blue paper. I think that one worked well, but it looked pretty sparse. This time I wanted a proper set, one that looked like somewhere a guy like Rocco could build himself a car. I've tried to create a bit of depth and a hint at an exterior world by including a window. As you can see, the view out of the window is formed from two very simple elements. There's a crumpled sheet of green tissue paper to represent a hillside, and a piece of blue card taped to the wall for the sky. So this is literally behind the scenes, a view of the set that you're never really supposed to see. This is the back of the wall, and it's obviously absolute garbage. The key thing to remember is that you only need to build what the camera sees, and whatever's out of view doesn't really matter. Moving to the back of the set, you can see it's more of the same, possibly even worse from this angle. So don't worry if you haven't got the exact bricks you need to build your set. Just concentrate on getting one side of the wall looking okay, and you're good to go. One of the most important aspects of animation, and photography in general, is light. The light setup I'm using here is a studio light, which in this case is an LED cob light shining into an umbrella. The umbrella creates a big diffused light source that illuminates the scene pretty evenly. It's a soft light source, meaning it doesn't create any harsh shadows or bright spots. It's not a particularly interesting light. I mean, it doesn't bring much in terms of mood or atmosphere, but it does the job, and I think it suits this particular scene. The camera I use is a Fujifilm X-T4. It's a mirrorless camera rather than a DSLR, although that doesn't make a lot of difference to the images it captures. Here it's fitted with a 50mm lens, although I often use a 30mm macro lens for closer shots. The main benefit of this setup is that the camera can be attached, or tethered, to my laptop via a USB cable. The laptop's running DragonFrame, which is image capture software that also allows you to play the sequence of images you've taken, so you can check how the animation is looking as you go. This is super useful for checking the timing of movements. For all the build animations I've made so far, I've literally worked through the instructions page by page. I've made some very minor changes to the assembly sequence once or twice, just to make the animation smoother or to incorporate a move that I feel works well. But generally, I'm building the model for the first time as I'm shooting the animation. That's probably a mistake. I've hit a couple of obstacles in the past that wouldn't have been an issue if I'd been more familiar with how the model comes together. To be honest, I quite like the process of discovering the build as I go, so I'll probably stick with this way of doing things, for the time being at least. If you've watched an animation tutorial for more than about 5 seconds, you'll have heard somebody talking about sticky tack. It really is as useful as they say. The main applications are keeping your set or background fixed in place, or holding a character or brick in place when they're off stud. I use this white tack version, but I don't think there's all that much difference between this and other brands. I'm always surprised how effective even a little blob of it can be. The piece I used to help Rocco vault out of the car is probably about half the size of a grain of rice, but it held him in place with no problem. Here are some other helpful tools. On the left, there's a squeezy dust blower thing for cleaning camera lenses and keyboards, which is also useful for blasting away any dust or hairs that fall onto your set if you've left it in place for a while. The old toothbrush does the same job for more built-up or stubborn dust. Obviously, that's not an issue for a new set, but any bricks that have been on display or in storage for a few months might need a quick scrub. The brick separator is great for when I need to swap out bricks during the build process without disrupting the rest of the model. Then on the right, tweezers. These can be useful to reach into the set to pick up small plates and tiles that have fallen off, but I mainly use them to move minifigures' arms and hands when I can't easily get to them with my fingers. This pair is from an incredibly cheap set, and its ends have slightly rough edges. I'm worried this is scratching up my minifigures, so it's probably worth looking for a nicer pair, ideally with plastic or silicone covers on the tips. Finally, this keypad looking thing is the DragonFrame controller. This is super useful for taking photos and flicking back and forth through the frames without touching either the camera or the laptop. I often have the laptop right next to the animation set, so being able to hold the controller in my hand or to have it on a different surface is really helpful to avoid knocking the camera or the table between frames. One thing I'll try never to do again is to have anything in shot that isn't properly fixed down. When I was building the garage scene, I thought it would be a good idea for Rocco to have a box of random parts in the background. So I just packed a bunch of garagey looking things into a crate and assumed that once they'd settled into place they would more or less stay still. This was not the case. Even though I never actually touched the crate, the things in it jiggled about every time I moved anything on set. The worst bit kind of looks like the box contents are jumping due to the door slamming, but the rest of it is just unwanted random movement in the background. If I want something like this in my set again, I'll put some sticky tack at the bottom of the crate to hold things in place. A similar thing happened with the steering wheel. At first I didn't notice how much it was turning between shots, but when I played it back there was no hiding it spinning around by itself. Rather than reshoot, I masked out the steering wheel and overlaid a still image. This stopped the spinning, but drew attention to the fact that there's some micro movement going on from shot to shot. For subsequent scenes I jammed the steering wheel in place using sticky tack, which reduced the unwanted movement, although it didn't get rid of it completely. I try to avoid sunlight affecting my animations, but my studio is a garden room with big windows and no blinds. It means that outside light does affect the overall exposure of the photo sequence, even if the sunlight isn't hitting the set directly. This results in the flicker you can see during the animation. I need to fit some blinds or at least hang up some thick black cloth to block out some of the sun and give me better control over the light levels. The last thing was the reflection of the umbrella in the large rounded piece at the back of the car. If I'd known it was going to look this bad, I'd have shot it from a different angle, or used another modifier on the light. Fortunately, it's only really obvious in this one shot, so other than bringing attention to it here, I mostly got away with it. This was my first attempt at building a dedicated set for a stop-motion animation, and to be honest, I'm really pleased with it. It's worth noting that the room is vastly overscaled compared to Rocco himself. But by making the set as wide as possible, I was able to set up plenty of different camera angles without risking the edge of the set showing. One of the shots I'm particularly pleased with is this sequence, where Rocco pulls the roof over the top of the car. It's an example of replacement animation, a technique where different pieces are swapped out between frames rather than being simply moved. The effect is of the pieces changing shape, stretching out to form the roof of the car. The important thing to remember with replacement animation is that although the shape of the parts can change, the overall volume should stay the same. This ties in with the famous animation principle of squash and squeeze, meaning that as the roof material is stretched out to be longer, it must also become thinner. This helps to ground the animation with some recognisable physics from the real world. Another shot that works better than I expected is this one, where Rocco rips off his disguise to reveal his secret identity. I looked everywhere for sand blue tiles to stand in for his trousers, but I don't have any. I tried the shot using pale bluish grey ones instead, and to my surprise the colour change is barely noticeable. I guess it works because the grey tiles are only on screen for a couple of frames, and the viewer is going to be paying more attention to what's being revealed than the bits flying off screen. But it shows you don't always need the exact pieces you think you do. I hope this little tour has been interesting or useful to you. If you have any questions, suggestions, or if I haven't explained something very well, please let me know in the comments. I'm still relatively new to animation, but I'm really enjoying it, and I hope I can help to inspire other people along the way. If you're looking at the camera or the lights or DragonFrame or anything else I've used here, and thinking that you need the same sort of equipment before you can make decent animations, please don't fall into that trap. With the exception of DragonFrame, I use this stuff because I have it for my job as a photographer. But it's not necessary. People are making incredible stop motion with just a phone, a free app and a desk lamp or two. It's never about the gear, so please don't let that stand in your way. Thank you so much for watching, and please consider subscribing if you like what's going on the channel. I'll see you in the next video.